Skills for clear communication of sustainability. Skills for sustainable, resilient and socially fair communities. European Year of Skills, 7th of June 2023. European flag, GreenSCENT logo, Mediaverse logo, Access Cat logo, Transmedia Catalonia logo, Rethink Action logo, Firelogue logo, iChange logo, from 3rd to the 11th of June 2023. Hashtag EU Green Week. Partner event, image featuring the growth of a small plant.
Welcome everyone again to our webinar Skills for Clear Communication of Sustainability, organized as part of the Green Week. My name is Chiara Gunella, and today I will be guiding you through the webinar. I am a researcher and communication and dissemination officer at Transmedia Catalonia. And to self-describe myself, I have short, light brown hair, green eyes, piercing on my right nostril, and today I'm sitting in my room wearing a black t-shirt, and my pronouns are she and her. Just to give you a briefly introduction, this event was co-organized by Transmedia Catalonia and Xarxa Access Gap. Transmedia Catalonia is our research group focusing on investigate accessibility in different areas such as game accessibility, universal design, 360 immersive and accessible experience, green digital accessibility, and much more. The other organization network organizing this event is Xarxa Access Cat, which is a knowledge transfer initiative focusing on different areas of accessibility in Catalonia. This event was also co-organized by 5 Horizon 2020 projects, which are GreenSCENT, Firelogue, Rethink Action, Mediaverse, and iChange. And all these projects have something in common, which is the aim to educate, empower, and inspire citizens of Europe to have more environmental friendly behaviors in their daily lives. How? In different ways, through accessible risk management plans, through 360 storytelling platforms to create your own environmental story, through citizen journalism, and much more that you will discover during the webinar today. So maybe now you are wondering why create a webinar on skills for clear communication of sustainability. We decided to create this webinar because this year is the European Year of Skills, including skills to effectively communicate about sustainability and climate change to different target groups. And also what we want to do is to share with you skills that can support you in the achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which for who is unfamiliar to them, these goals are 17 goals with 169 targets that all 191 UN member states have agreed to try to achieve by the year 2030. And among these development goals, you can find lots of them related to sustainability and climate change education, such as, for example, number 13 for climate actions, 15 life of land, or 11th, sustainable cities and communities. So today our aim is to try to give you these skills to reach these objectives, focusing on communication of sustainability skills. So now that you know a bit more about us, we would like to know a bit more about who you are, who are the participants of this webinar. So please, I kindly request you to go on www.menti.com. And once you are there. Please add the following code, 17474795, and share with us what country are you connecting from. Okay, we can see people connected from Portugal, Italy, Belgium, Czech Republic, Romania, Denmark, Malaysia, Israel, Ireland, North Korea, Spain, Croatia. Let's see if we receive more answers. We are a really intercultural and international group, and this is great because we may discover different skills that in different places, different people use to communicate sustainability. Now, moving to the next question, please try to tell us what is your specific area of study or profession. I see lots of the people connected are focusing in their career or study in communication, science communication, sustainable mobility, failure in merchant navy, fashion, public health, forestry governance, social science, sustainability, Horizon Europe, veterinarian, conservation, marketing, energy policy, conservation genomics, science manager. So also in terms of work and in terms of study, we are a really diverse group. And I think that also this aspect will enrich our conversation, since a person focusing on communication can have certain strategies to communicate sustainability, and other people focusing more on accessibility can have others. So thank you to tell us a bit more about yourself. Let me go out from this. Now, before we officially start, I would like to remind you the agenda. So we had an introduction, and now we will have the first presentation by Caterina Dor, Head of Design and Climate Media Factory, which will give us a presentation on visual communication of sustainability, representing the iChange and Rethink Action project. Unfortunately, she is not here in person, but she sent us a video that we will show you. Afterwards, we will have a presentation by Pilar Orero, senior researcher at Transmedia Catalonia, and she will focus on clear communication for all, making communication accessible for people with disability. Afterwards, we will have the presentation by Eduard Planabac, Head of Forestry Policy, CTFC, and he will explain you more about his reality. And his presentation will focus on challenges about communicating on work fire to society. And in the end, I will briefly introduce you to a strategy we developed in GreenSCENT to communicate sustainability to children. And in the end, finally, we will have a moment for questions and answers. So now I would like to officially start with our first speaker, our first presentation, and Caterina Dor, colleague, will show us the video they developed to tell us more about visual communication of sustainability, showing us the examples from the iChange and Rethink Action projects. Thank you again.
Yes, hello, I'm Ephraim. I'm the colleague of Katharina. I'm wearing a black t-shirt. I'm in the office, he, him, and I now try to share the video.
Hello, my name is Katharina Dörr. I will tell you today about visual communication of sustainability. Unfortunately, I'm not here in person today, but I recorded a video for you, so you have my presentation even if I'm not there. And my colleague Efraim Proszkowski sits in the audience and will answer your question you might have after my presentation. And you can always contact me through my email address I attached at the end of this presentation. So a little introduction about me. I work as a communication designer for the Climate Media Factory in Potsdam in Germany for the visual science communication. Here I am responsible for the design for videos and all graphical concepts and elements, especially for two Horizon 2020 projects, Rethink Action and iChange. I will give you some insights about today. And yeah, in general, as a designer, I'm interested in the influence of design in society. That involves the question of how design influence or even shape human behavior and which responsibility designers have when they design. And this is so-called design research, design theory, or design science. And it's also important when it comes to climate communication. Before I start my presentation, I will go a little bit through the agenda. First, I will talk about the field of profession that's called visual communication, so you get a better idea what exactly it is. And after this, I will introduce you the two Horizon 2020 projects, Rethink Action and iChange, Climate Media Factory is working for, and as a partner. And yeah, I start with the question, what exactly is visual communication? So the basic answer is, of course, to make something pretty, but visual communication is more than that. It's about the concept how to communicate a message visually. So all of the following decisions that will come now, designers have to take depend on the concept of the project. So first of all, of course, it's important to know what is the project all about. Then for whom is the project made for? There we have a really diverse range of people all around the world. Common categories in our case would be scientists, stakeholders, decision makers, citizens, but who are often also categorized in gender, age, class, and so on. But I will come back to these categorizations later. So, which kind of mood do we want to communicate in this project? Here, simple adjectives are helpful. Is it serious, scientific? Do it has to be simplified? Utopian, dystopian, youthful, and so on. The fourth is what images do we use to communicate? That means what do we want to show and which representations do we use for this? That are, for example, photography, icons, illustrations, movies, 3D renderings, or even installations and objects. And the last thing is which media do we choose for our communication? So how do we reach our target groups? Do we use prints like on posters, flyers, brochures, or digital as some platform, blog, social media, or even to decide if it's touchable or to be seen through AR or VR? What else to keep in mind for visual communication? The biggest challenge of visual communication is to be visible in the overload of images at our times. But no matter how challenging that is, images always help to make a topic visible to its audience. For this, most of the times you also have to add a simple verbal language, like a title or a description or spoken word, especially for complex content like science and climate impact research. But the best case is if you have, if your images say already more than 1,000 words. But I think it does most of the times already more than just words. Visual communication always helps to communicate the core of a topic, because for creating a simple image, you as a designer have to reduce the complexity to its core message. So also it's important to say that an image is never just an image. Graphic elements like icons, for example, have to be consciously defined by their shapes, so reduced, but still easy to understand. In colors that are good to remember and placed where it gets the attention we want. And all of these individual elements, like each color, each shape, and also the context we put it in, always already have a meaning in themselves that designers must keep in mind and bring together in the best way to achieve the goal, communicating the message of a project visually. Now I will tell you something about the Rethink Action project. Rethink Action is one of the Horizon 2020 projects in which we promote climate action by developing a data-driven application. The aim is to enable policymakers, stakeholders and citizens in Europe to make better decisions for land use-based adaptation and mitigation solutions related to climate change. To afford this, Rethink Action will deliver clear and valuable information based on 6 representative case studies in Europe, covering the main regional differences related to climate change. The application will allow users access to solutions on local, European and global scales. Rethink Action also aims to promote active participation in climate action and to create awareness for political changes as well as for individual behavioral change. For this project, I want to show you how we started the design from scratch to give you an insight how we created a visual appearance of a sustainable project using the example of the logo development. When I started my work, I got the proposal of 123 pages, where I have chosen the basic and most characteristic words to get the core of this project. For example, sustainable, land use, adaptation and mitigation, society, satellites, different case studies, driving change, climate action, modular models, and some more. Also, because of the scientific context, I have to be aware to simplify the content as much as possible to make it scientific, but at the same time visually attractive and accessible for everyone without scientific background. First, I decided for the motive, because we also use satellite data within Rethink Action. I've chosen the satellite view on a green field or forest, on an agriculture field, and on an urban setting, showing people who move from above. Also, I decided to use natural muted colors for the logo and pastel colors for the backgrounds and illustrations to lighten or highlight the muted colors. Muted colors are always somehow nature-based, but can also go down a bit. Pastel gives brightness and an idea of natural light, sky, or even water. But also the typeface had to be decided for the whole project, and that's difficult in an international project because there are not many typefaces you can use for many different languages. In our case, for example, Greek letters were not easy to find in a font, in a typeface. But more important is that the typeface needed to be serious, but at the same time a bit playful, to keep text, scientific text, but also description text attractive to people with no scientific background. And I think this font does it really well. It's Vira Sans. Because it is about climate action, the whole logo needed to look activated, not grounded yet. That means they are in a slight angle to get them this visual appearance of action. And that's also why this angle is used for every icon within Rethink Action. With this logo, we also had to create a whole style guide, a leaflet, posters, a website, a roll-up, publication templates, social media templates, illustrations, and more. The colors determine the visual attention of your project, as it does in Rethink Action. The visual appearance of your project will define how easy your message will be received by people and if they accept or reject and understand what you say. And in Rethink Action, it's a welcoming design with brightful illustrations, scientific as well as on a par with non-scientific people. And it has to be thought diverse to get as much people as possible for your project, but this I want to introduce you another For this, I want to introduce you another Horizon 2020 project that's called iChange. iChange, for example, is a project that is focused on behavioral change of citizens and their sustainable decisions in their daily routine. How they move in their cities, how they handle their trash, what they eat, how they use their electricity, and so on. The project aims at promoting a behavioral change through citizen science initiatives. That means in 8 different cities around Europe, but as well in Israel and Burkina Faso, all called living labs, citizens are held using sensors to collect data, for example, of temperature, air pollution, and humidity. Collecting data, and thus the data collected, will provide more information on how to act on climate change. Designers learn what people want to see, to feel, to experience even, and that it can be different from group to group. And that means designers have a responsibility. They have to be sensitive with their surrounding and have to reflect their position and their socialization all the time, especially for privileged designers. It is important to keep in mind that European projects often appeal to a wide range of people. iChange is made for citizens, means it includes really every gender, every age, every class, nationality, and physical abilities. Everyone. In society, these categories have been criticized and have become more fluid until today, but they are still used to define target groups because we also need them sometimes. That's why all of us have to reflect our view on people and things and open up for a more diverse world. That sounds simple to say, but of course it's never easy to adapt in practice. It needs time, but I think it's worth it and important if we want to include everyone. In iChange, it is even more complex because we show people, but also food, transport, cities, houses, and nature, what must be thought globally. I want to give you 2 examples for that. The first example is food. When I created an icon for food, this came out. But as we have living labs in Jerusalem and Ouagadougou, this food and their packages doesn't work for all of them. So a colleague and I discussed it about it, and so I changed the food icon to this. That would work definitely better for different cities than before. The second example I want to give is about people. Simple icons of people are white, female or male standing on their feet, but we want to have it more diverse, right? So the figures for iChange got more or less an undefined body shape. No clothes are exactly recognizable. Their curves change while the figures move. Children, old people are included. People using a wheelchair. And that, for example, opens up a question, what if people can't take the bike? Also, the skin color has to be diverse, and it's really important to not always use white skin color and dark skin color only if we talk about migration, because unfortunately it happens a lot. We can use it for that, but we have to use different skin colors more randomly in any case, because that's how the world is. It's always a balance and have to be discussed in a dialogue. A more detailed illustration shows us, for example, the gender challenge better. This was also made for iChange. If this person could have been clearly a woman, I would reproduce a picture of the housewife. This person, instead, could still be a woman, but also a man or a non-binary person. The haircut makes a difference here, and also the shape of the clothing and the body. So actually, these are no solutions because I don't have them. It's just something I try and I reflect while I'm working, and that has to be discussed all the time. And this is why it is also really important to give feedback which icons work for the whole target group and which doesn't. As well as it's why it is important for all of us to keep that in mind and to discuss this. So I'm done with my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, you can ask my colleague Efraim Proschkowski. or you contact me through my email address I attached here. And enjoy the rest of the day, and yeah, maybe we hear from each other. Goodbye.
And thank you again for your presentation, because I think it gave us concrete steps to make visual communication less complex, but also to try to make communication for all, also regarding representation and how we should try to represent without using stereotypes or prejudice that we have when we build up images also related to climate change and sustainability. So thank you again for your presentation. Now I will give the floor to our second speaker of the day, Pilar Orero, Senior Researcher at Transmedia Catalonia, that will present clear communication for all, making communication accessible for people with disabilities. Thank you, Pilar, for accepting to be here today, and the floor is yours.
My name is Pilar Orero. I am 64 years of age. I am white. I have short grey hair, round glasses, and I am sitting at home. And at the back, in the back of my me is my bookshelf. What I'm going to present is clear communication for all. Making communication accessible for people with disabilities. And in fact, this presentation is very, very complementary with the presentation Katerina has just made. This presentation is part of the European project GreenSCENT that I will present now. Yes, so clear communication. Clear communication is something that we're doing in our lab, which is called Transmedia Catalonia, across all the projects that we've got. For example, Young Archers, which is an Erasmus Plus, or IDEA, which is an Erasmus Plus, but also in Migrant Mile, which is migrant integration through locally designed experiences, again, or Mediaverse, or ClearClim. All these projects, they are to do with either migration, to do with education, to do with the sustainability, but all of them, they share one thing, and it's the accessibility. We want to make sure that the message that whatever we do in the projects are accessible for as many people as possible. That is that everyone, never mind your abilities or disabilities, you can access to whatever we are saying in the project, and of course informing in the web page. Who is the user for us? The user for us in the title, it was clear communication for people with disabilities. People with disabilities was highlighted as the extreme cases, but for us the end user is everyone. It doesn't matter who is your gender, who is your where do you live. It doesn't matter what is your ability or disability. It doesn't matter anything. So we try to look for universal design. And universal design, it means that we're trying to try to design for as many people as possible, even though there would not be everyone. For sure, we will forget someone. Isn't it fantastic? Can you see the backup? It's not completed in my screen. Right now they decided to, okay, now it's gone. So basically for us, we try to design with universal design in mind for as many profiles as possible, trying to leave no one behind. That's what we try to do as much as possible. So who is the end user? That was the first thing. Now, what is clear communication? Clear communication has got some very basic principles in it. One of them is organization. How do we organize what we are going to say, both in the content and in the continent, in both areas? Then the language that we use, it has to be easy to read language or easy to understand language. There is not an agreed terminology on what is it called, the language plain language sometimes is used as well. So basically what we are, all these different areas are trying to say is that the language of communication has got to be easy to understand, easy to read, easy to. The other issues are legibility and readability. I don't know if in your languages exist this differentiation that exists in English. Legibility in English is only to do with perception. It is to do with the type, it's to do with the color, it's to do with the, while readability is to do with understanding what you're reading. In Spanish, for example, we don't have that. We only have one word that gets both of them together. But in English, you have both. So both legibility, perception, and readability, which is to do with cognition, they have to be taken into consideration. And I suppose those two got to do with the idea of easy to understand or easy to read or plain language and clear communication at the end. The other issue is to do with the layout, how you develop how do you develop the content and how is it seen, how it is explained, but more at a visual level, not at a content level. And the last thing is that it has to be effective. So of course a 30-page presentation, a 30-slide presentation would not be effective for a 15-minute presentation that I have. So these sort of issues, they have to be taken into consideration before you start doing anything. What I would like to do, which is perhaps very nasty in a sense, is that to analyze what we had in the project GreenSCENT. GreenSCENT is a project, is an H2020 project, and it is to do with how are we going to define the skills for the future for Europe to do with climate change. What should everyone in Europe learn about climate change, in a sense that perhaps it would be fantastic if we could achieve like a driving license for everyone. So everyone should have pass a driving license. Everyone in Europe should pass a sustainability license in order to live in this Europe that we have, that unless we do something drastic, we're going to have more and more climate changes. I don't know if they can be reversed or not, but at least it shouldn't go worse. So that's what we are defining in this project. Now, how did we communicate this in our webpage? Well, the first issue is that we made a mistake, is that we didn't know who was the webpage directed to. Was it to do with, I don't know, but this is what we had at the moment, what we had in the past as the landing page. And as you can see, we already have Shaping a Green Future. To me, that's more to do with a company that is trying to sell something, not something that is engaging. Shaping a Green Future to me is not engaging, and not engaging children either. So that was a big problem. Another big problem to me there was that the landing page had the project, the pillars, how many different sections it had. So it had the project pillars, methodology, demonstrations, partners, news and events, and contacts. So it was far too many. So that was problematic. So the first thing that we had to decide, it was who was the end user for us, and then try to redefine and redesign our web page for the end users that it was for us. So as I mentioned in the title of this presentation, for us, end users were everyone, but that included and especially included people with disabilities. So for that reason, we did focus on accessibility for our web page. The second thing that we had to design is we had to do a easy to understand language or easy to read language and text design. So the font size, the paragraphs, the headings, alignment, the use of images, tables, graphics, and elements, and the arrangements of elements in the page. So again, this is what the first page was in our web page, the project. And as you can see, no images, it just had text. And the text wasn't even in nice lines. It was just there as you would have it on any draft in any Word document. So that's another thing that we had to change as well. We had to change the content, but we also had to change the project itself. I haven't put what it looks like now because on the chat you would have the web page of the project, and then you can go there and you can see what I am talking about and how we have changed from having 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 pages to having now very little, to having, so we've been changing all the content of the web page to align with clear communication. The other thing that we had to do is to edit. We kept on writing loads and loads of text. So even though we were using some sort of organization within the web page and within the pages, it was really far too much. So it was painful, but it was something that everybody had to accept. So eventually we were able to edit and chop and cut and take away. So less is more. We had to kept on reducing and reducing and reducing. I understand that not many people like the less is more, and not because once you've created something, why should that be taken away? The thing is that if you have too many elements, you don't see what is important. And this is what we have to aim at. The other issue was to complement what you're saying with what you are showing. So, for example, in this page, it was demonstrators. Well, all you could see was the text of the demonstrators. You could not go into what a demonstrator was. So to me, this web page that we had in the past, the demonstrator did not demonstrate anything. They just demonstrated some text. So you could not really understand what a demonstrator was for us, which again in itself, it's quite interesting because a demonstrator for us, or at least a demonstrator to me in this project is not what I understand by a demonstrator. So again, it was like a double problem. One, it was a semantic. What is the concept of demonstrator? And 2, what is a demonstrator in this project? And 3, how do we show it some sort of a visual way? What are the demonstrator? So again, we had to change that page. And finally, to visualize, I don't think what we had in methodology in this web page visualizes the methodology. It visualized how was the workflow of the methodology, but it definitely did not visualize what was the project and what was the methodology that we were going to use. This was just simply a workflow, and it wasn't visualizing very much what we were going to do. So again, that had to be changed. At the end of everything, what you have to do is to test with end users if what you have really is what they are getting. So of course, we did have to do tests of this new web page that we did for GreenSCENT with end users, and we did it. So basically, that's what all the painful stages that we had to do to move from a web page that it was designed by someone at the very beginning of the project to try to make it from an ordinary web page into an accessible web page, into an engaging web page, and a web page that would fast and efficiently communicate what we wanted to communicate in GreenSCENT. And that's my presentation. I hope it was interesting. If anything, it was complementary, I think, to Katerina's previous presentation. And I'm here for the discussion later on. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pilar, for giving us concrete examples actually on how we can implement accessibility in our projects. And I think it's really good because we saw before in the Mentimeter that there are people here involved in fashion, sustainability, accessibility, education. And we all probably have a web page. So you gave us concrete steps that actually we can do to improve the accessibility of our web page. So thank you so much again for your presentation. Now I will give the floor to the third person presenting today, Eduard Planenbach, representing the Firelogue project, which will give us a presentation on challenges about communicating on wildfires to society, seeing the green beyond the smoke. Thank you again for joining our webinar.
Thank you very much, Chiara, and once more, thanks for leading this interesting webinar in such an important topic about how to engage society within sustainability in the current situation on the world worldwide. I think it's very nice having in the audience so many people from different country realities. What we try with this presentation is just taking the example of the situation of wildfire as a complex issue, to share with you some of the aspects and some of the challenges we are facing as a project, to communicate properly and to engage society and stakeholders. And we're using fires because at the end, as I said, is really a complex issue. It's a very international one. This is a European project, so please take into consideration that many of our reflections are under the European context, because I'm seeing people here also from Asia, where maybe the context is quite different, also a cultural point of view. And this is one of the main challenges when dealing with communication and recommendations. So if our cultural context is a determinant, up to what extent we can formulate messages, even accept messages, etc. Firelogue is a European project. It's a Horizon project. It's a coordination super action. In fact, it's coordinating very important wildfire-related projects, European projects that are running in parallel. So Firelogue wants to support the coordination of that projects. And you can see here the main objective, and I try to highlight those more related with communication, awareness, etc. We have an aspect that in some previous presentations also were approached in terms of justice dimensions, and there is a lot of to say and to do in terms of trying to be aware of justice dimensions also during communication. But also we want to approach real or at least perceived conflicts that can appear when putting in place integrated wildfire risk management strategies, but also synergies. Obviously, giving more capacity to the wildfire risk management community to address the current and future challenges. Here, there is an important topic that we faced from the beginning of the project, that who are the wildfire risk management community? Sometimes the most difficult questions are the easiest ones. And for overall, to create spaces for dialogue. So in my presentation, I will introduce some concepts, as I said, just using wildfire risk management as a topic for just sharing with you some challenges in terms of communication and community engagement that maybe are easily we can use also for other topics. And at the end of the presentation, I will also share with you some of the tools we have in terms of communication and stakeholders engagement. Yeah, I think that for most of us agree that wildfires, at least every summer, are normally on the front page, and thanks to climate change, more and more this is happening, not only right now in the Mediterranean countries, but also all across Europe. And last summer was very clear that we just had fires running. I think that in the same week, we had very heavy fires running from Algeria to England. So something that is the climate change just making the issue more complicated is that for long, wildfire impacts are not anymore fires are not only impacting in forest and forestry. I mean business related to forest or nature conservation, etc., but are more and more impacting in society and business related to economy of the territories. And this picture is, for instance, the wildfires impacting in the touristic areas in Turkey 3 summers ago. But on the other hand, we are also having fires in new territories, or at least we are having new kind of fire behavior in traditional territories. I see that in the audience there are many experts in communication, so we can start thinking how difficult it is communicate about something that people is not used on. So and this is putting new challenges. So we have this both levels of 3 levels of challenges. So it's more values of the territories are exposed to the risks, or new actors are part of the problem and need to be part of the solution. But at the same time, we need to be enough creative to build some kind of risk culture in areas where that culture doesn't exist. And maybe one new challenge is that we don't have too much time to do that, because climate change is making this kind of communication to make people more aware about the situation very urgent. So yeah, fire and wildfire risk communication need to be understood as a whole, and this is a scheme we use to try to define wildfire risk and main components. And I'm moving fast because at the end we are not able to go into detail to everyone, to each one, but just to make a picture about, as I said, some of the complexity we have. And the main core right now, the main issue that all emergency systems are just trying to explain to society is that according to the landscape we will have different kind of fire behaviors. So most of the solution is just trying to influence the capacity to spread the fire. And you know that there is this horrible word, I'm doing the direct translation to English, that we talk about clean forest or dirty forest. So it's very strange word, even me, I'm forester. So, but it's a way to explain to society that having more or less fuels, more or less amount of vegetation within the forest, the fire will have one or another kind of behavior. Obviously, within communication, we also need to insist and talk about reducing ignitions probability. And you see these are some initiatives we are having here in Catalonia, where we are at this moment, we are even asking people not to enjoy mountain areas and forest areas and protected areas because of the risk of fire, just as a way of trying to taking off the probability of new ignitions. We are also just trying to keep people safe, and just asking them not for traveling or for visiting forest areas. So, but you can imagine that this kind of communication is quite strong. So people is accepting this kind of sacrifice, so they cannot visit during the weekend a mountain area because they feel themselves part of the solution. But we don't have very clear up to what extent they will accept that measure if you are closing every weekend the touristic area because of the risk of fire. Most of emergency bodies are very worried about the capacity or not they have to protect people. And at the end, this is what is exactly making climate change in terms of wildfire risk and land use changes, that is just collapsing the capacity of the system to protect people. And this is moving in somehow to a new paradigm, and that probably you have listened about it. And it's not just only in terms of fire, it's in other kind of natural hazards. We are asking people the capacity to learn to live with. Normally this is, and I think maybe this can be part of the discussion, how to really communicate the idea of living with and what exactly means to live with fire or floods. Yeah, normally I say that people can agree to live with fire, but maybe they don't agree to live with wildfires or neither with disasters. So there are different levels of. I'm adding this table because at the end this article shows very clear the paradigm towards most of the academia and the scientifics and researchers agree that we should move forward. But once more, there is a lot of challenges in terms of communication. Fundamentally, for instance, some of you are from Spain, and me, my generation, have very on our mind public campaigns that was basically all against fire. So if we are asking people all against fire, it's also difficult to make them understand the natural role of fire in the ecosystems. And I'm jumping to another concept that probably for most of you are new, but this is something that we can import from America and USA, etc., that they have a deep knowledge about the natural role of fire in the ecosystems. So fire is part of the ecosystems, and we know that many forests were able to survive or to live with natural fire regimes. So they are talking about restore natural fire regimes, and even some win-win aspects in terms of water provision, which, for instance, in the Mediterranean is very clear. So these kind of messages from the academia point of view, from the expert point of view, are very clear for us. But the audience of today is a good way to test the capacity of comprehension of these kind of messages. So really, people can understand what means restore natural fire regimes if we basically only explain the bad side of fires in terms of wildfires, damaging wildfires. In the Mediterranean, we are trying to make a bridge. So we are not exactly saying we should restore natural fire regimes, which is very difficult to know what they are, since we are a very cultural landscape, etc. But we know that we have traditional activities on the land that are in somehow copying that natural role of fire. And I will share you some examples. This is another kind of examples, another kind of problem we have. So you know that from emergency point of view, one of the main worries, I said before, for emergency bodies is to protect people from fires. But for instance, this is a picture of Catalonia in last century. We decide to put a lot of houses in the middle of the forest. But currently, what we are just communicating and asking people is if they are prepared in case of the fire arrive. So it's a kind of contradictory. So in somehow the public system just allow to build houses in the middle of the forest. And at the same time, we are just asking people to make them responsible about that. I'm saying that just as an example, and I'm putting a very different way of dealing with the situation. Just integrating the fire issue in the urban planning process and building this kind of communities where each of the stakeholders has a specific role. They are putting all together, they are sharing the needs they have, the capacities they have, and they are trying to build a common solution together. So I'm moving fast. I love this article in terms of human perceptions and management implications at individual level. But if you can keep in your mind some of that, and of course you will have available the presentation, and you can transform some of these recommendations in terms of communication. This is something that is guiding our work in my group here in CTFC, but also we are trying to put this into Firelogue. So then aspects in terms of perceived responsibility is a clear, crucial aspect about how to make people proactive in this case of managing risk, for instance, but obviously also trust, etc. So this is where we are. So we are trying to send that message that how the landscape management is contributing to wildfire reduction. There are some examples. This was in the border between France and Catalonia. And in the picture in the middle are the landscape of France with a lot of vineyards, and the picture on the left is a fire we had in Catalonia, where the vineyards were abandoned, and then we have a lot of fires. But the last picture on the right, or the Twitter, is exactly a role that some vineyards play protecting people from the impact of the wildfire. So we are trying to include this in some kind of communication, just to try to explain people how this managed landscape is protecting them. Some of the resources we have is also trying to make labels on that, and just to help people that through the consumption of local products, they are contributing to the landscape management, then they are contributing to the protection. And this is another kind of communication. This is a protocol that is working in Catalonia from more than 10 years. And this agreement between the forest range and the farmers in the cereal harvesting season. And this is a very successful history. So how they working together, and at the same time implementing that protocol, they are doing awareness, and they are also making farmers part of the solution instead of part of the problem, because there are a lot of fires that started with the machines, etc. So this is just a list of main concepts I share until now. So a lot of challenges in terms of communication. Since the impacts are increasing, and yes, I think that with the audience there are many experts on how we can really explain people that our capacity to protect them in front of wildfires is limited or is collapsed. How to communicate about rare and unprecedented risk situations, how to motivate risk culture, which normally takes time, but we don't have this time. How to use communication for building this sense of fire community. How to improve that social understanding of the good fire role. There, I think that there is a lot of room for nature-based solutions and narrative, storylines, etc. We have had very successful histories in involving environmental NGOs, having a common message from science, from NGOs, and this is reinforcing a lot the messages and etc. Yes, also link the awareness with capabilities, because if not, people is very aware, but they don't have the resources to implement that through culture. Put in place a strategic communication. So as I said before, it's a wall. We need to act in the different stages, in the different moments. We can, for instance, engage the tourist sector. So this is the typical question. We want the visitors from Central North Europe that are enjoying summer in the Mediterranean aware about wildfire risk, since they are only visiting us 1 week, or maybe it's more smart just to train the touristic sector and they can play a kind of direct communication just in case of emergency, for instance. But also in the strategic communication was said on the previous presentation, the important to test the messages to the end users, but also to follow up the success or not. And once more, communication more and more in terms of wildfire risk is a condition, it's not anymore an option. So I'm finishing about what we have as a Firelogue tools we have to carry out this community engagement, stakeholders engagement. One of the things we have is what we call these infrastructures of dialogue, that we organize 5 working groups with high-level experts. And within this, every topic we want to approach, different aspects, and in any case, normally most of them are related to how to move forward to integrated wildfire risk management. In our case, our group is leading the environmental ecology working group. On the other hand, we are also approaching justice aspects into integrated wildfire risk management. There is a paper that is going to be just published probably next weeks, and we are using distributional, procedural, and restorative justice. And here I'm just adding some examples about what we are talking about when also we are dealing with communication. So are those roles and responsibilities properly defined and communicated, or is normally affected community in a burn area engaged in lessons learned? They have their role to express their worries, their needs, or there are some examples. And finally, also Firelogue is creating a Lessons on Fire platform aimed at promoting networking and exchange across projects, European projects, community. But in this case, end users are more expert community and people related, in landscape management, but it's not society in general. So I try to be on time, Chiara. I hope I got it. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your interesting presentation and for giving us insights on the wildfire risk management, and also how you try to include intersectionality in your ways of creating risk management plans. And I think the discussion also about how you communicate about risk that you can encounter in a city, taking into account tourism, is also an interesting discussion, to which extent you communicate correctly. So I think there will be place for some questions later on. I will now present, and I will start sharing my screen. Okay, so as I mentioned before, my name is Chiara Gunella, and I'm the Communication and Dissemination Officer for the GreenSCENT project and researcher for Transmedia Catalonia. And today I will briefly introduce you to the team of communicating sustainability to children. So my presentation will be mainly about two main areas. So the impact of climate change on children, and which is the problem that I will be analyzing. And then I will offer you a possible solution. So how we can communicate sustainability and sustainable living as a solution to children. So when we think about the effects of climate change on children, researchers have shown us that there are many consequences that they face, but we can summarize them in three main points. So the daily consequences of climate change, climate anxiety, which is the fear of the future and the fear of having all the responsibilities on climate change. And so often we hear children and also young people say that they listen from their parents or adults, I can do much. It's your responsibility now, because now you have an entire life to solve the problem. And then what we discover and what emerged from several studies is that there is a lack of climate change education and accessible climate change communication of different aspects, among them sustainability. So I will briefly go through these 3 points, trying to be fast to give enough time to questions in the end. So what do we mean about the daily consequences of climate change that children have to face? To enter into this topic, I want to introduce you to this report. That is a report by UNICEF by 2014, titled The Challenges of Climate Change, Children on the Front Line. And this report analyzed how climate change is affecting children around the world. And what emerged is that young children are most at risk from high temperature and climate-induced migration. Especially worrisome is the threat posed in our ability to feed the world's growing population. And again, children are at the greatest risk from any increase in malnutrition. And here you can see that children are the ones that may face forced migration the most. And the International Organization of Migration, IOM, what stated in a recent study is that when a child migrates is the person that is most frequently engaged during the journey to violence. So these are some of the elements that due to forced migration, due to climate change, children can face. Going into more recent data, I want to present you data from the Save the Children report, Born into the Climate Crisis, Why We Must Act Now to Secure Children's Rights. And according to a recent study published by Save the Children in 2022-21, there has been a significant increase in the level of exposure to extreme events through a child lifetime since 1960. To imagine that, to illustrate that, let's try to compare the life of a child born in 1960 to a child born in 2020. So compared to a child born in 1960, across their lifetime, a child born in 2020 will be exposed to 2 times more wildfires, 2.8 times the exposure to crop failure, 2.6 times many drought events, 2.8 times as many river floods, 6.8 times more heat waves. So you can see that there is a huge increase in exposure to extreme events over lifetime. And this affects, obviously, children, which are more vulnerable to all these natural events. And then there is another aspect that I want to stress. Children face climate anxiety. I want to focus on emotion because we all experience them, and children are experiencing that a lot, which is the fear that they feel about climate change and its impact on the future. So they carry a sort of weight of responsibility because they are, in a way, the ones who will inherit and have to address these environmental challenges as a next generation. To give you more insight into data, I would like to look with you at another report sponsored by UNICEF, Climate Anxiety and Young People and Their Beliefs about Government Responses to Climate Change, a global survey. And in this report, it's possible to see how children perceive climate change. So they were trying to answer to this question: how children and young people around the world report emotional, cognitive, and functionality responses to climate change. This was a study that was done with 20,000 children and young people in 10 countries: Australia, Brazil, Finland, France, India, Nigeria, Philippines, Portugal, the UK, and the USA, with 1,000 participants per country. I don't want to generalize, of course, because it's not a worldwide study, but what emerged is that 60% were saying that they feel very or extremely worried about climate change. More than 45 of the respondents said their feeling about climate change negatively affects their daily lives. And to give you more insights in these studies, before Edward was telling us about climate justice, I just want to express that countries expressing more worry and a greater impact on functioning tending to be the poorer in the global south. So people in the global south are the ones that, according to this study, are suffering more of climate anxiety. And if we look at the global north, Portugal, that was involved in this study, is the one that showed the highest level of worry when thinking about climate change. And this can be related to the fact that Portugal recently experienced an increase in wildfires since 2017. Regarding the other aspect that children face, so the lack of clear communication and clear education, I just want to mention what UNESCO stated in 2022, which was that education is crucial to promote climate action. And to quote UNESCO, education helps people understand and address the impacts of the climate crisis, empowering them with the knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes needed to act as agents of change. Looking at other reports, and I will be super brief, there is this report by UNESCO done in 2022, examining 129 educational curriculum documents from 100 countries. It emerged that 47% of the national curriculum analyzed made no mention of climate change whatsoever. And to give you other examples, when they have it in the curriculum, it appears to be very minimal, the presence of climate change discussion and sustainability discussion. And if we look at the countries where it is more present, education of climate change, actually, they are the countries more affected by climate change. Countries that are increasing the level of climate change, if we look at Europe and the globe, the Northern America, for example, in terms of percentage, they focus on climate change at the 9%. So I don't want to enter into discussion, but it's curious to see this level of diversity. And looking at another study by UNESCO 2022, where around 17,500 young people were involved from 166 countries, while asking them if they feel prepared about the topic of climate change, and they feel they can understand, 70% of them that answered to this survey that they cannot explain climate change, or they can explain the broader principles of climate change. So these are the main problems that we summarized, and we wanted to show to you about the impacts of climate change on children. But now let's go with the solutions. Now I want to give you some examples on how in our GreenSCENT project we are trying to face these 3 problems that children face, communicating sustainability and sustainable living as a solution, taking care of climate anxiety, the effects of climate change, and climate education. So just to give you a quick overview, but already Pilar gave you the presentation. We are a European project trying to foster environmental awareness and actions to protect our planet through different tools, among them accessible learning by doing activities and tools. Our target groups are schools, students, young people, and children. Among our activities and tools, there are tube sensors to measure equality, 360 interactive storytelling platform to create your own environmental story, and much more. Pilar mentioned already the Excel, our license, and a competency framework that we are developing to foster environmental education as much as possible. So while creating all these activities and tools, for us, what is really our principle is the Article 12 of the United Nations Convention of the Rights of the Child, which stated that every child has the right to participate and know about what is happening to our planet. The convention recognizes that all children or young people below 18. And what are we doing in our project? So we are trying to communicate sustainability or sustainable living as a viable solution in different ways, which can be summarized in this principle. We are trying to simplify complex concepts, make, as Pilar mentioned before, our communication on websites, social media, on paper as accessible as possible. We are trying to use engaging visual. We created during the project 2 YouTube videos, one specifically for adults and one specifically for children, because what we wanted to do is try to engage with them. We try to encourage curiosity, and for this we are developing interactive storytelling platform. We are trying to foster participation as much as possible, incorporate storytelling and different formats of storytelling, emphasize with young people trying to contact with us. And we have this approach which is collaborate and learn and be ready to relearn some concepts that children can tell us. And what we are trying to do, but sometimes it's really hard, we are trying to challenge our adult-centric perspective. We are not familiar, for example, with TikTok, or we are not so familiar with Instagram, but if these one are the platforms that young people or children are using, we need to try to familiarize with them if we want to reach them. And now let's go to the concrete example I wanted to give you. Inside our project, we developed a storytelling toolkit for children in order to let them create their own environmental stories about sustainability and about environmental issues about climate change. So we created this toolkit with the visual identity of our project, because we also want to keep going with the visual identity of our project, providing children and parents or schools or friends or who is taking care of them with a video tutorial, an example we created for them, and giving them the GreenSCENT characters to create their own environmental story. And this was done because we believe that we should give them agency and we should let them try to tell us their own environmental stories, and they may discover things that we did not think about. So I'm going to the end. I just wanted to show you like 1 minute of an example that was created by a school, the Royal School of Transylvania, which is one of our partners. just wanted to give you an overview. So the children of this school, they created their own environmental stop motion story, telling also their friends how they were trying to be sustainable in their schools. And we did not give them guidelines. They create their own environmental story from their perspectives. And involved in this activity, there were students from primary and secondary school. So I will go to the conclusion. There are several resources available. We will share with you our GreenSCENT resources that are open source and can be, you can use them anytime you want. But yes, here are NASA recently created this Climate Kids toolkit to teach online about climate change. We have UNICEF that wrote guidelines for parents to speak about their children, and also the National Geographic Kids toolkit. We will share all these resources with you. Thank you again for listening to me. And I will share with you my email in the chat so that if you want to reach out to know more about these aspects, I'm happy to answer to all your questions and requests. So now we have 10 minutes for questions from the public. Thank you again for listening. So for our participants, if you want to ask questions to our speakers, to us, please write them in the chat or raise your hand. Thank you. Let's give a few minutes. So we have a question from, I don't know if I pronounce it correctly, Gonser Angela. How do we make all of today's resources available to large public? How, like, everyday living person can find them and become aware of them, first becoming involved? If you want, I will start from our GreenSCENT perspective briefly. All the presentation of today will be available and will be added on Zenodo, which is an open source platform. And regarding the rest of our contents will be available on our website. What we are trying is to organize these webinars to let different audiences aware of our projects, activities, and resources. I don't know if you want to add more.
Yeah, from our side, I just want to share the reflection. I'm not sure if Angela is asking about the presentations of today or just the tools, the topics we are approaching with our projects. But an important reflection is for me at the end, after many years dealing with communication, is just obviously you need to be strategic, so you need to identify target audience and users of your communications, but sometimes you don't need to reach people directly. I mean, this is something that we are more trying to explore in our daily work. For instance, as I said, as an example, doing planning tools and engaging specific actors, stakeholders within the planning tools is a very good way to make them aware. And maybe if you do a proper planning later on, you also have people aware or have people protected. So maybe it's not always necessary to look for the individuals, to look for the citizens, or a clear example is something that we are dealing here, what we do with the tourist. So if you are coming here for holidays 1 week, that means it's necessary to make you a fast training on wildfires in the Mediterranean, probably not. So just to balance that some messages needs to be broadly spread around this global society in general. Others maybe needs to be put it within children's and they starting this kind of new risk culture, but other kind of resources really needs to be focused on other intermediate actors that will really spread the message by their own. And we, for instance, made nice work with journalists, trying to work with them and build together the messages in terms of wildfire risk, and also learn from them how to communicate, because we are not experts on communication. And once we have this kind of work together, it works very well, the communication that the journalists can do. And then they are not only explaining the situation, but they are also doing awareness during the explaining the situation. Just to share this reflection. Thank you.
Thank you, Eduard. Ephraim, do you want to add something about your project?
No, just underline what you already said, that we also have to take care of the channels and try to understand these new channels like TikTok and Instagram. It's not too new, but yeah, making nice media, following the best rules of design, but also try to spread them, and therefore really think about the channels and how they work, and what are the tricks and what are the expectations if you publish something on a specific channel, and to have all this in mind. And this, yeah, also means a lot of effort, but I think it's worth.
Thank you so much for your answer. So I remind you that if you want to ask questions, you can raise your hand or write the question in the chat.
If nobody's talking, I can tell you what we've learned in our situation, and is that rather than do something that you have to do again, like we had to do with our webpage, it would be nice to think and think hard before you start doing something. For example, I went this weekend to this amazing shopping place near Barcelona. They've spent a fortune on it, and my husband couldn't park the car because they have the green and red, like IKEA, on top of the car park. So yes, they spent millions of euros in this place. My husband could not understand why I told him go here or go there, because it was the green and the red thing. So very simple, silly. We can change very small things and make it available for everyone. And this is today, that's 2023 in Europe, in Barcelona, in a very expensive shopping mall, that we are still reproducing very stupid mistakes. IKEA is still, biggest shop ever, everywhere, still using red and green, again, same. So let's think, because very easy problems, mistakes can be changed very easily. So that's what we've learned from our webpage, yeah.
Thank you, Pilar. Actually, I have one question for. I have lots of questions for all of you actually, but I just wanted to ask to Eduard, since we are focusing a lot in our researches on accessibility. I wanted to know how you are implementing accessibility in your wildfire risk management plans, or how are you planning to do it? Because for us, it would be super interesting to learn more and to know more, if you want to share with us.
Yeah, Chiara, maybe it's an issue of communication. The term accessibility, in what sense are you asking for? Accessibility is just physical accessibility to the places, or?
I was considering, like, when you write or when you develop a risk management plan, for example, actually before you were mentioning that you are taking care of thinking about the elders, for example. So I just wanted to know how you developed this concept and this approach in your project.
This is this is fundamental, because the diverse stakeholders engaged in, for instance, in a risk management plan is so diverse that normally, and I love your previous presentation also, Pilar, that sometimes we approach most things for normal people. But normally, I mean, it's like obviously normal people like that. But the more sensitive, more crucial measures, normally the more exposed and more vulnerable are those who are not normal, and they are not in our common frame. So I'm going to put an example. There was in very rural, remote areas, this very typically having very old people that they don't have access, obviously, neither to Instagram, neither TikTok, neither mobile. But sometimes they don't have, obviously, updated the driving license. So they cannot drive. So most of the protocols is like, in case of fire, you will receive a message in your mobile, and then you have to take your car and move out. And obviously, this doesn't work anything. So, and they find the opposite. So it's exactly the opposite, because old people is not able to travel. What happened when it's a fire running, for instance, in Galicia, is that many of young people is going inside the fire area because they want to move there to protect their parents. So they are finding exactly the opposite. So probably is this kind of things that you really need to be very aware about what kind of people you have. Another example is that recently in Catalonia, we are having more and more fires, campfires, which was something totally solved from last years. And probably it's because we are having new cultural groups that they are not aware about our, let's say, way of living with. So they are going for fishing in a lake, and they are doing a campfire for heating the tea that they want to drink during the. So they are cultural users, and this happens a lot of people from Central Europe that come to the Mediterranean and they don't know. So you need to kind of to approach this kind of people, and this needs to be very sensitive. One of the, for me, main problems we have is that the administration sometimes is not enough sensitive. So they are much more from the authority. So they put common rule. Everything is forbidden. Everything is prohibited. And maybe we need to work better this kind of audience in a very targeted way. And we need more sorry for the expression, more woman on that sense, to be sorry for being simplified, but in a way of being more sensitive, because it's too much authority, too much vertical, too much top down, and we need to build together. I hope, Chiara, I could answer in somehow your
Totally. I think that the key point is to speak and be with the users, with the people,
Exactly.
and that's the only way we can do it, because maybe from our perspective, we imagine, as you said, that all people will take the car and maybe they don't have the driving license. So I think that's the key. I think we can leave space to the last question and then close our meeting. We are running a bit late, but if there is another questions, welcome. Okay, I think we can close the webinar. And first of all, I want to thank all the speakers for their interesting presentation, for supporting me and our team at Transmedia Catalonia. I want to thank Pilar for actually connect all these people and all these projects. And you didn't see them, but Marina Pujadas and Sarah McDonough were supporting us as well in the background. So thank you to you as well. Thank you to all the participants. We will send you an email with all the material that we shared, with the contacts of our projects and the recordings. And now we generally conclude our webinar with a sort of things called chat storming, where you share in the chat how you liked our webinar. And while you will be leaving, I will reading through your comments. So it's a sort of goodbye with kind words from, or not. But thank you again. So thank you very much. Very interesting in the chat. What a great session, full of insights. Thank you all for your time. It certainly is a pleasure to hear from others globally about their work and initiative. Thanks to the organizer and the speakers. We have a long comment. Thanks a lot for information about your project's work. Greetings from Hungary. Very interesting webinar, a long comment. I found this webinar super informative, either in the terms of content as in structure and how to communicate. I can easily adapt these guidelines to other contexts, which is great because it's what we wanted to achieve with this webinar. And thanks to all the speakers, nice webinar full of useful tips. So again, thank you to all of you. Sorry for the technical problems that we had related to sounds and video. We will for sure improve our skills since it's the European Year of Skills. Have a great day, and for the speakers, if you want to stay for a few minutes, I will wait for you. Yes. We will share with you, Angela, all our emails. I will send all of you an email, and you will have access to all the presentations. They will also be published in the official Transmedia Catalunya Green Week page, so there you will be able to download all our presentations. And thank you to all of you again. I close the webinar.
Skills for clear communication of sustainability. Skills for sustainable, resilient and socially fair communities. European Year of Skills, 7th of June 2023. European flag, GreenSCENT logo, Mediaverse logo, Access Cat logo, Transmedia Catalonia logo, Rethink Action logo, Firelogue logo, iChange logo, from 3rd to the 11th of June 2023. Hashtag EU Green Week. Partner event. Image featuring the growth of a small plant.